Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. We are rapidly approaching the end of 2024. And of course, for most of us with perfectionist tendencies, that tends to trigger our desire to get it all together, right? To make some changes for the new year, and often a lot of magical thinking and thought errors about what it means to quote unquote do a better job, right? To get your stuff together. So today, what I'd like to focus on is some common thought errors. There I go, correcting my own grammar as we go. Common thought errors that contribute to moral injury. And today we're going to focus on some things that happen in particular with the electronic medical record, which is such a mixed blessing. I think anyone who has ever charted on paper can appreciate that there is some more pleasant nuance, right, to being able to chart electronically and have easy to read records, right? There's a lot of good things there. But there is also a lot of not good things there, a lot of tech challenges, and this creation of a portal system where our patients can, access us, quote unquote, 24/7. So that's what we're going to focus on for today, and specifically some thought errors that contribute to moral injury that may keep you overworking, that we have to bust through in order to make some changes. So this may resonate most with primary care physicians, but I'm going to guess that there are others of you who are listening who can definitely identify some similar stories. Let's say you are logging in Sunday night to check the inbox, or Monday morning. You've been away, hopefully, from the inbox for a little bit of time, but you go to check your patient messages and you see that somebody messaged in the middle of the night about crushing chest pain. They felt sweaty, short of breath. They didn't know what to do. And so they logged in to their side of the patient portal and sent you a message about it. Anyone listening who has experienced something like that, where you know that there is something potentially medically emergent going on, that somebody decided to log into the portal and send you a message, or some other, inappropriate way to access care that the patient thought was appropriate, right? Obviously, they thought that was appropriate. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it, but it isn't appropriate. And that pit of the stomach feeling that you have, worrying immediately that something terrible has happened and that it's your fault. So that is thought error number one. When we see something like that, we are often very quick to interpret a message that comes through inappropriately at a time that we are not available. We are very likely to interpret that as we did something wrong. Now, most of us work in systems where there is not 24-hour surveillance of portal messages, because that sounds terrible, doesn't it? And there's lots and lots of messages to the patient, like, this is not for urgent communication. When I worked for a large HMO, there was very clear messaging on all portals. Any way that you could message through the MyChart portal, you would see, like, this is not for emergencies. It will take up to 48 business hours for us to get back to you. There's lots of that language, and no one reads it, right? If anyone read that and thought, maybe chest pain and sweating and shortness of breath is not something that can wait 48 hours, they wouldn't message. Now, our patients are thinking that we're on the portal all the time. They are thinking that they should access care that way because we text, we do a lot of things that give us immediate gratification online, right? There's part of that. And our patients are afraid. Our patients are afraid of what's going on. If you've ever worked in primary care, you've encountered people, or the emergency, any setting, right? You've encountered people who have chest pain and sweating and shortness of breath, who understand that there is some risk of a heart attack, but are so afraid and in such denial that they will not go get care, right? We have all encountered that. I am 100% sure. I have seen it so many times. There are lots of reasons why our patients message us. But if my response to seeing a message like that has come through inappropriately, despite as many, potential warnings of this is not a way to access emergency care, if my response is, this is my fault, guess what that teaches my brain? That thought error, that thought and belief that this happened to the patient and it would not have happened if I was there to respond to the message, creates a state where my brain believes that I should be more responsive, that I should be more vigilant, that I ought to be somehow checking it and connected to it 24 hours a day. This is not a good way to think about the problem. It's a very normal progression for your brain, especially your brain that has been so highly trained to respond to other people. But just imagine if that were true. If it was true that you were needing to be connected to the electronic medical record 24 hours a day, just in case, here's my air quotes, just in case something happened, you will have zero life. You will be 100% connected. You will be 100% burned out. Your mental health, your physical health, you will have none of that. We cannot think that we are responsible for the outcomes of somebody sending us a message that way. But it is a common thought error, and it is something that keeps us very trapped and keeps us very stuck, feeling like I need to be connected 100% of the time. We did not cause the situation where the patient was having some kind of medical emergency by not being available. We didn't cause that. And whatever happened to the patient, whether the patient did or did not go to seek care, is also not our responsibility. Again, we may have very understandable reasons why we think that that's true. We may have been told that that's true by the patient, or it might have been implied by clinic leadership or some other person who wants to have someone to blame. That happens, and it happens way too much in medicine, right? So let's acknowledge that sometimes you have been made to feel like it is your responsibility. But even, this is for my direct care providers, my direct primary care providers, even if you provide direct primary care, right, where you have some off hours access, you cannot be 100% responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for everything that happens, nor can you prevent it. So you can see there's probably embedded here quite a number of thought errors that contribute to the stuckness that we feel, the attachment that we feel to the electronic medical record. And that may be a reason why you find yourself not getting your notes done during the day. Now, it's probably a pretty small contributor, but if part of you knows that you're going to be charting later in the evening, right, you might feel that, well, that allows me to prevent missing something really important that comes through very late in the day. But this, again, is not our role. It cannot be our role. We all need rest. We all need a break from the system. And our patients believing that they have 24/7 access to us specifically is not okay. It's not correct. It's not appropriate. Although we will also reinforce that thought error in them when we are responding to them at all hours of the day. You can see very easily how this system becomes a problem. If my patients are used to getting messages from me at 10 p.m., they will think nothing of sending me a message and feeling like they're going to get an immediate response. Now, I'm not saying that I never send them messages outside of standard office hours. I do, but just recognizing that there is a relationship there between what people expect based on what you do or don't do. And we need to be careful that we are protecting our boundaries, that we are not believing these thought errors and keeping ourselves stuck in this very unsustainable system. It's true that in the pre electronic medical record times, physicians used to take paper charts home, or they might come in physically on the weekend and get their paper charts done. Charting issues is not a new problem created by the electronic medical record. But what is a new problem is, again, this 24-hour access that patients feel like they have when they don't. Now, patients can generally access care 24 hours a day in most places in the United States and probably most countries, right? There is the emergency room. There are nurse lines. There's 911. There are a lot of things that are available for some kind of care in an emergent instance. It's not convenient. It's not cheap. It may not be the kind of care that they want, but that, again, is not our responsibility, and we can't carry that for them. So I want to ask you, what other thought errors come up and keep you feeling this way? So some other ones that I thought of. Yes, I need to check my box very frequently and regularly during my off hours in case something urgent comes in. I'm laughing thinking of a resident that I used to work with who would call in many hours before her labor and delivery shift to see what the board looked like. And I know from being an anxious person myself, she was thinking, if I know how the night is going to go, I have some control over how bad it might be, how busy it's going to be. That's a thought error as well, right? Feeling like if I just have this information on me all the time, I can steel myself against it. We never know what's coming, right? If she called and the board was empty or the board was completely full, it might be very different within a few hours. That's the nature, unfortunately, of our job. I would argue again that the better that we take care of ourselves during our off hours, the better boundaries that we're able to set, the more resilience and flexibility we have during the times that we are on. It's so important that we protect that off time. Another thought error that I see very frequently is, and I've experienced this myself, my patient refuses to see someone else. And therefore, we intuit, I am responsible for the consequences of their choice. So this could happen in an outpatient setting, of course, right? Where you don't have any openings. You don't have any openings for months, maybe, right? Because that's the way somebody decided your schedule should be. We could have a whole nother episode about that, but that's kind of the way it is. Your partners, your colleagues have openings. There's a walk-in clinic, next door or connected with your group. Somehow there's lots of other options. The patient refuses. The patient says, nope, I'm going to wait for Dr. So-and-so. And, they sit in their stubbornness, hoping that their stubbornness will open up an appointment, open up some time in your day, when of course we know that it won't. Unless you are believing that if you don't see Mrs. Jones will not get care and she might be very sick and die, and your brain just goes down this rabbit hole. People pleasers are very subject to this kind of manipulation. And I don't want to say manipulation in terms of this woman is automatically trying to ruin your life. I don't suggest that at all, right? There are probably many reasons why she insists on seeing you, including perhaps some trauma around medical care. That's a very real phenomenon. But unfortunately, if the only way she will access care is through seeing you and you are not able to accommodate, and you believe that you are the only answer she has and therefore responsible for the consequences, multiply that by however many people like that are on your panel or, that you care for, completely unsustainable. There's moral injury here, of course, because we don't want something terrible to happen to Mrs. Jones, and we cannot be responsible for her outcomes for whatever the reasons are that she has made the decision that she doesn't want to seek care elsewhere. This is a big one for a lot of people, and I know this keeps us stuck. I know that we are compassionate, caring people, and we want to be able to be there. But we are not resourced to provide care this way the majority of the time, even if you're in a direct care practice, unless you are setting up some same day accountability or availability, which usually comes with a direct care practice, you still can't be available 100% of the time, 24/7. You cannot do it. Yes, there were old systems that were set up in different ways. You think about, the small town doc that somebody had to come and bang on the door of your house in order to let you know that somebody down the road was really sick, or they had to call you. There was more of a barrier for those kinds of emergencies. And I don't want to pretend that that was perfect either. I'm sure it wasn't. I can think of all kinds of terrible things, that we could say about that system. But the very real consequence of adding the electronic medical record and a patient portal is that it created this belief in our patients that they could access us 24 hours a day. And that's probably true whether you're primary care or specialty, right? They believe that they should be able to get us, to answer their questions right here, right now. It's not sustainable. And we often don't have a lot of control. Like, yes, there can be messaging, right? There can be messaging to the patients that you're going to have a delay. They can still be upset. Am I saying that's appropriate? No, but that's the reality of humans. We can acknowledge that that happens, and it's going to happen whether you are on the electronic medical record or not. But if we believe that that has to go away, that patients need to fully understand and not message emergencies after hours or not have feelings about policies, if we believe that that has to be true before we can stop this behavior on our side of constantly checking the electronic medical record and the patient messages, we will wait for forever and we will spend so much time and waste so much of our lives with this hypervigilance. Again, it's complicated. There's moral injury here. I think many of us have experienced trauma responses because we quote unquote, we missed something. Again, often inappropriate things sent at weird times or results that come back at weird hours, right? And you cannot be fully available all of the time. You will miss some things, not through any fault of your own, but just because it happened. Things happen. Things happen to our patients' bodies. Things happen to our bodies. There will always be some things that get missed or dropped or lost. Those things have always happened since the start of what we call medical care, and they will continue to happen. And let's not believe that our 100% attachment 24/7 to the patient portal is going to prevent that from happening. What we can do is we can practice taking good care of ourselves, recognizing our emotions, recognizing it's difficult when we believe that we should be attached to protect people. It's not sustainable. We have to let that go. In order to provide excellent care, compassionate care, in order to be able to continue the work that we do, we need to be able to treat ourselves with compassion. We need to be able to have boundaries so that we can have rest and relationships and connection with the people that we love in our lives. We need to be able to separate ourselves from this calling of medicine. Just because we have this high level responsibility, just because we feel this call, doesn't mean that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 365 days a year, you can be always on for hundreds or thousands of patients. It's not possible. If you've been holding on to some of these thought errors, some of these beliefs that this is the only way to do things, we're going to have to practice letting those beliefs go. Whether or not our patients send us messages inappropriately, whether or not our patients agree to seek care elsewhere or, to see a colleague, regardless of those circumstances, we're going to need to be able to take care of ourselves well in order to be able to continue doing the good work that we want to do. My friends, this is brave work. It's hard work. It takes really tapping into what am I believing is true here? But when we can see how we got to this place, why we believe these things are true, that there's multiple layers to it, we can start to chip away at some of these beliefs, be able to be healthier in our boundaries, be able to acknowledge that things are going to happen regardless of whether or not we are on the electronic medical record 24 hours a day. Mistakes will happen. Things will sometimes get dropped. I'm not saying that there's no responsibility. I'm not saying that there's not a need for system fixes. I'm not saying that our healthcare system works perfectly. In fact, quite the opposite. What I am saying is that you alone cannot bear the responsibility of the weight of all of that and the hundreds or thousands of patients that you take care of on a regular basis. You are not their only option. And in order to continue to be a great option for them, to be able to provide compassionate, highly educated, and qualified medical care for them, you need to be able to take good care of yourself. My friends, as 2024 comes to a close, I invite you to really lean into this work. This is the work that we are doing every day in Unbound, my group for women physicians. This is the work that we do every day in my one-on-one coaching with people. And it's work that I believe is very necessary for us if we have struggled with boundaries and people-pleasing and perfectionism in order to be able to stay in the game. I did have a period of time where I thought I would leave medicine. I just didn't feel like I could keep doing it. Changing these beliefs, being able to really engage with the idea that I am a human with human needs and wants, and I deserve rest and self-compassion and boundaries. That's what's allowed me to come back to the practice of medicine, to be able to do it in a sustainable way that brings me joy, and to be here with you, doing this work alongside you in unwinding these beliefs that keep us stuck in burnout and moral injury and unsustainable workloads. My friends, my heart is with you as you do this work. I invite you to reach out if you would like some additional support. And until next week, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.